Many of us in Pittsburgh, and many of us in this room, have been advocating for many issues in the African American community at large, poor community. And on a personal note, as chair of the Black Political Empowerment Project, two of my members of our planning council, as senior citizens of this city and actually of this neighborhood, have encountered the issues that many of us have been advocating for and against in terms of what happens to people, in terms of finding properties to rent that they can afford, how they're being treated in the process, and what the city and agencies and the development companies and the management companies must do to treat people fairly, give them plenty of time to do what they need to do when they have to move, and that our city provide as many opportunities for people to be able to live in the communities in which they love and have in many cases existed for years and decades. We have two ladies who are part of our Black Political Empowerment Project Planning Council who happen to be Hill District residents who have experienced some things in recent weeks and months that in our last Bpep meeting, I think we took half the meeting to talk about this. And it struggled at our hearts, tugged at our hearts. And we appreciate all the partners who came together to support them and to support the issues. So we're going to let them share in their own way what they've experienced. The good news is, with pretty much a day-long series of negotiations and conversations, we at least have a positive conclusion for Mary Evans, so she will not be out of her house. And we were not sure as of late this afternoon. She had her 84th birthday last Friday, and it would be more than terrible that 8 days later she's out in the street.
Wow.
Mary Evans, would you share your story? And let's give her a hand. And a happy birthday.
Thank you, Tim.
Absolutely, stand up.
Okay. As Tim has said, my name is Mary Evans, and I have been a resident of Crawford Square since 2003. In 2018, we were told that, in 2017, we were told that our apartments or townhouses would be remodeled and we could return to our old resident, our present resident, once the remodeling was complete. On August 17th of 2018, I moved to a temporary residence in Crawford Square. And my rent was the same. On December 22nd, I was told that I could move back to my original townhouse at the same rate that I was paying when I left. I was pleasantly surprised, and on December 30th, I moved back to my townhouse. It was after that that I found out that my rent would go to market rate, and that would have doubled my rent. Had I known prior to moving back, I would have proceeded in selecting another place to live. I was not. So it has been stressful to now look for another place to live because in most areas there has been a long waiting line, at least for 200 to 400 persons have already signed. That too is stressful because you don't know where you're going to live and how you're going to move. I must say there have been many places that I've checked, and again, the waiting line is long. The cumbersome part of this is how it has been handled. If I had known in December, I would have started the book in December. I wasn't told that until later on. And so it is stressful to be put in a position such as this. Now, I must say, working something out with McCormick and Barron, and hope at this juncture that it will work. I'm going to move temporary into one apartment until I can find the two-bedroom apartment. And in the meantime, I must say, I jumped through all the hoops. I went to my physician twice. I received recommendations of what I needed for adequate housing. I'm on a cane because of my arthritis, and that's all I need. I'm ambulatory, and I can do steps. So with his recommendations to the housing authority, I still was not to get adequate housing. And that was, for me, it was the two-bedroom apartment. So some equipment could be placed in the extra bedroom. I think it could have been handled differently, and they could have been more concise in telling a tenant what was expected of them. And that is my story.
Thank you.
We're going to, we also want to give a big shout out to the Urban League of Greater Pittsburgh, who assisted us and assisted Mary in this process. And Monday you're going to meet with people and we're going to make this work. So, Mary Young. Mary Young's been a Hill District resident for many years and part of our Bpep Planning Council, and she's going to share some of the stories and actions that happened in Oak Hill, your early experience at Crawford Square, and in the old Washington Plaza, which is now, it's called? City View. Come on up, Mary Young.
Good evening. Well, I'm Mary Young, lifetime resident of the Hill District. I was born into this Hill District in December 25th, 1942, and tried my best to stay in the Hill District all my life because it's home. But in trying to, and I'm going to jump ahead because I have a long life, a long history. I'm 76 years old, and I don't want to give you 76 years of history. So, but in my experiences in looking for better housing, a more convenient housing, affordable housing, I left Crawford Square. Not because it wasn't working. I left there to move to City View because I was at that time looking to purchase a home. And I was looking to purchase a home in the city. And I found that I could save some money there, which was what I was doing, accumulate money, so I had the down payment and so forth. So I moved to Washington Plaza, City View, and the accommodations they made there was great. Everything was included in your rent. You paid enough rent where all your expenses were covered there. Your cable, your electric, gas, your water, your sewage, all the things that people will now charge you for. And then they got purchased by a place, people from New York. And everything, all the amenities that had been established there was no longer, you had to pay for all that yourself. Well, the problem was there were people who lived there for 30, 40 years. I mean, that was their home. And 17 years. I mean, I met so many wonderful people there because the atmosphere was such that you just like staying there. But once they made the changes and we were unable, I even wrote a letter to Mr. Gould, who's one of the owners, to get him to reconsider, even, at least for the seniors that live there. But I didn't get a response to that. So that people began to move out. It's a great, I think most people who have been there for a long time, who would make that their home, all of them have moved out because of what has transpired down there. The people, there was no indication that they cared anything about the residents. So, in my looking for a place to move, I looked everywhere I could in the hill, and then a friend and I, we rode around, bless her heart, she's a great friend. We rode all over the city of Pittsburgh because I was trying to stay close to the hill. And there was nothing. I mean, everything was nothing. So I got home and I looked on the internet, and there's Oak Hill sitting there. Now, I never really wanted to live in Oak Hill because it kind of put me in the mind of when I was a young mom raising kids in Whiteside Road in the project. And then as I thought about it, Whiteside Road, the project, was a lot better than Oak Hill.
Yes.
And so I went up, the young lady called, and I went up. And the bottom line was I was totally appalled. I totally appalled at people taking these old buildings and camouflaging them. I call them ghetto fabulous because they camouflage them. All this stuff is wrong with them. I was there for about a week, and it was raining really hard, and I had called the emergency number so that somebody could come and do something, and I had called to Manila, and I asked, I said, are you talking about Manila? And they said, yeah, this is the emergency number. And so I said, so how are you in Manila going to come do something here in Pittsburgh, in Oak Hill? And so that was just another crazy thing. I had called the office. I called every office that they had listed, and I never got a response. And I got real frustrated because it kept raining. That was one of those rainy seasons. And finally I said, okay, I'm going to do what I know how to do. I called and left a message to the manager. Said, here's what I'm going to give you a courtesy you haven't given me. I'm planning on having a press conference up here, and I'm going to put my money in escrow because you do not know how to take care of your residents. An hour later, I got a call. Now, the young man showed me another apartment. It's a long story. Right now, I moved from one apartment building into another apartment building. None of them were that great. They look nice, but underneath, you go in there, all these things are wrong. When I was on my scooter going down to go into Hyman Place, young ladies were on about there, and they said, hey, miss, are you moving in? I said, I'm trying to. They said, we just want to let you know we don't have the buzzer. If you get company, you have to come downstairs and let them in. The other young lady says, I haven't had a buzzer for 9 months. The other one said a year. So I'm sitting down there and I'm saying, this just can't be real. I walked in the door, I felt like a priest. I walked in the door and people would come up saying, you moving in. These people don't care nothing about us. Another one came up, I didn't know these people from a can of paint. We freeze in the winter, burn up in the summer. Everything, what can I say? They'll send someone in who's supposed to do the repairs. They're doing a little bit better now. What they didn't know is that I have been the assistant deputy director for Allegheny County. And I knew how to do a few things and try to get a few things happening. So now our building have a buzzer so people don't have to come from 4 flights down or let people in the front door. I don't know who else have buzzers. The hole in the roof, I think that was fixed about a month ago. But I moved to Hyman Place, where they tell me that the way the heat comes out of it's not vent, it comes around the floorboard. So it was really cold, and I was like, let me go check this and see where this heat is supposed to be coming from. There was no heat. And on another side, it was lukewarm. So I called the office, they sent somebody up. And they told me that, oh, this is 143. What, Mr., what do you say? You know what, I might be a little old black fat lady, but I'm not crazy. And so, and then they said, and then they had a thing fixated with the, so you could adjust your area or whatever. And I'm saying, they said, well, that say 75. I said, it always say 75. It doesn't work. So my concern for Oak Hill, for City View, for any of these places where the powers that be let these people come into our fair city, build these expensive places that we cannot afford and can't. And our government, whoever is responsible, they need to take a look at that because they're losing people. I'm getting ready to move out of the Hill again. And it's a wonderful place. I know that I don't have to worry about the heat or the gas or anything, but it's a beautiful place. But why should I have to move out of the Hill District to get those type of accommodations? And so I'm not going to belabor this. I just Tim just wanted me to share my story. The people need to be given more consideration.
Right.
Absolutely.
Very nice, very nice.
It's called neuropathy.
The sad thing is, a lifetime resident of the Hill District felt it necessary to leave her home. I mean home in terms of her neighborhood, and not by choice. She's not even in the city now, she's in Wilkinsburg. So I know the solutions are not easy, but they have to be found. The statement from the Black Political Empowerment Project with regard to this, and we'll have some other folks share their thoughts. We don't want people to have to leave their homes, their neighborhoods, if there's any way they can be allowed to stay and be in a situation to be able to stay. We don't want people to be forced from their residences. The situation involving Mary Evans, which again we salute those from McCormick, Barron, and Crawford Square who worked with us to begin to lay the foundation to resolve the situation. But we were concerned about what happened in jumping from a rent of $864 to being faced with $1,749, which shocked most of us in this room, if not all of us. And
800 shocking. Yeah.
So what we're looking for is that tenants have a process that is a little more warm and friendly, shall we say, more sensitive. And that's what we're all seeking to do. We have some recommendations. Particularly because all of us in this room are activists at one level or another. And everywhere we go, we hear concerns about firms, development firms coming in and who have no attachment to our city, no history. And they don't care except to make money.
That's right.
And we're not against people making money, but they need to make money in a way that allows people to be cared for in the process. And that people are not from our various communities, the south side, the north side, the Hill District, East Liberty, Belt Silver, wherever, that they felt like they have to leave. Due to significant increases in rent and uncaring practices of the new landlords. We are concerned that senior citizens feeling the need to leave the neighborhood they have grown to love and the isolation that may very well follow in a neighborhood in which they know no one. That's a concern. I have a concern for Mary Young. We're concerned about our elders not being able to, an expression we came up with in the Bpep meeting the other day, I think it came from Reverend Michelle P. Ellison. Age in place. Evelyn Hawkins? Age in place. I like that. And enjoy their later years in an environment in which they are familiar and in which they are close to friends, churches, and associates. Mary Young was shown places out in, where was it? They even talked about Tarentum. They went to,
and Avalon.
I mean, she don't need to be in those places.
Yeah.
Her church, her minister's right here. Grace Church, where my mom went. Upper Hill. She needs to be here. And we need to find a way to keep people here if they want to be here. We are strongly urging the adoption. And I want folks in this room going out of here, maybe we have a little follow-up session and see if we can fine-tune some of this and get some partners. We have strong partners in this room. A much more sensitive approach to these situations in terms of how rents are determined, how the rates are communicated to the affected residents, and how services are provided. We're also requesting that a policy be created which would require the Crawford Square Leasing Office, McCormick Barron, Oak Hill Apartments, management from City View Apartments, and all other such management companies or entities, once they have determined when an apartment might move from a subsidized rate to a market rate. Each affected tenant will be given immediate written notice so as to allow the tenant to have sufficient time to determine if they can either assume the new rate of rent or would at least have more than sufficient time to find a new home for themselves that would meet their needs, including the possibility of staying in their present neighborhood. We want that to be a universal policy. These dates of market rate determination can be predicted far in advance due to the original negotiations between the public bodies and the developers. Does that make sense? This proposed policy would greatly benefit senior citizens and new residents who may need much more time to prepare for such major changes. The Black Political Empowerment Project and our community partners are calling upon all management companies and all area elected officials to immediately review the issues described in this letter and to move to make significant changes in how tenants are served and treated, and how exhaustive efforts can be identified and implemented to allow people, wherever possible, to remain in the buildings and in the communities of their choice, and to do so at an affordable rate of rent. If Pittsburgh is to truly be a city of equity, a city of equity, a city of equity, these must be addressed in depth and must be addressed immediately. I'm going to ask Helen Gerhardt, who's for many years been one of the strongest advocates for housing, affordable housing, to come forward. Ask Carl Redwood of Hill District Consensus Group, Brunel Guy, if they would share the platform.
So the current conditions that so many groups of people are facing today, groups that are supposed to be protected by civil rights are facing, these are not accidents. Segregation has been imposed by policy, by law, by bulldozer, again and again in this city. In the Hill District, thousands of homes were bulldozed to the ground. All across this nation, people were forced to leave homes that they had bought because those who were elected decided they wanted white and black separate. White homeowners were heavily subsidized, while black people were forced into rental properties that were then maintained in dreadful conditions. The Fair Housing Act was passed soon after Martin Luther King Jr. was killed because they knew that people were absolutely unwilling to take the decades, the centuries of injustice, of exploitation. This city has been an active participant in imposing sentences of segregation that prevent people from the most basic opportunities, from being able to access healthy food, good jobs, public transit, health care, the most basic needs of human life. Right now, there is migration every single day of black people because we choose, this city chooses to give market forces more value than civil rights or human rights.
Yes.
This is something that our mayor, Bill Peduto, campaigned on. He said he was going to adopt equitable policies, that he was going to take actions. I served on the Commission on Human Relations. I was part of city government. That body is to uphold civil rights, and I will tell you the city does not uphold the Fair Housing Act. Right now, this city could adopt policies which could prevent this harm that is happening all over this city. So people are being forced out into the Mon Valley. People are being forced to Penn Hills. In the Mon Valley, there's much greater pollution, much less access to all basic needs. And you can see it in the health impacts. You see much greater infant mortality, diabetes, heart disease. So many of the diseases and the deaths that are caused by the stresses that these two elders of our community are facing today. People with disabilities, people who have, seniors who have lived in their communities for generations. So there are some really basic policies that this city could adopt right now that could help prevent this kind of harm. Right now there are so many low-income people that when they complain about the sewer not working or the roof leaking, they are evicted for no cause. This city could follow the example of cities all across this country and adopt just eviction standards so that people could only be evicted for not paying their rent or for damaging something. But instead, when a tenant asks for a landlord to do their job, to uphold their responsibility, they're kicked out. And they don't have any way to pay for the lawyer that could represent them in court. Landlords have so many resources. So we could have adopted that policy years ago. We could have used the power. The city uses incentives all the time. We give enormous tax breaks to landlords like Pharos that bought your Pharos. They came from New York City. They own so much land. And they immediately started to stop maintaining their properties for low-income tenants. So the conditions that you faced, there are many other tenants of Pharos that are facing the same conditions. We could be using incentives to demand that developers provide a certain amount of affordable housing for very low-income people, and we could demand that they actually uphold their responsibilities. We could be using fair housing criteria in how we assess developments. This city has a responsibility not simply to not discriminate, but to repair the damages of discrimination. They are not doing that. This city could follow the example of other cities and invest in community land trusts where people would have permanently affordable housing, where they would have a democratic say over how their properties are managed, how their properties are priced, and how they are going to maintain a community where people know each other and care for each other over time. So, I would go much farther than my friend Tim Stevens here. I would ask the city to do its job and to affirm fair housing and protect all those groups of people that the law says is the just and right and legal thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask our we have Johnny Myatt, the first vice president of the NACP Pittsburgh unit. Office is next door. Third vice, would you stand? Second vice, Regina Reagan. Reverend Regina Reagan, and give us a comment, and we'll go to Carl. They're representing Richard Stewart, who is at another commitment tonight.
And the children will lead them. This is a biblical statement. Today, we are showing that the senior citizens can lead because they're concerned about their community. I heard a statement that they love their community. This is a situation where if the senior citizens keep what they're doing, the children coming up now will be able to love their community. They can be proud of remaining here in Pittsburgh. With the housing problems for years, ever since we had a committee for the NACP. Now pray that you young people will be able to
That's it.
keep on fighting,
Keep on.
because we will be fighting with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
One thing we need to note, unless things have drastically changed.
That's one way to stop the press conference. You okay?
Allegheny County should still be number 2 in senior citizens. That's number 2 in the nation. So that means we have a whole lot of senior citizens. Our income is not going to change. Most of us don't even get $1,700 a month. So how can we afford to pay that in rent? How are we letting people move in and escalate our rent to a number that we couldn't afford even if we said yes? So where are we going to go? They took part of the hill by eminent domain when they built the Civic Arena. Didn't give it back. You know, they're taking our neighborhood. Look at Homewood. Look at East Liberty. Those apartment buildings they built in East Liberty, $1,700 for a 1-bedroom apartment. So what are we gonna do? You gotta start thinking we need to do something, either in our election process, we need to get more younger people fighting to be elected so that they can do something to change these laws, to keep these outsiders and some foreigners moving in, raising the rent beyond our ability to pay. And then moving our young people out, because my grandchildren were displaced and they moved them to Greensburg, Latrobe. I mean, what is that doing to our city population? That changes our schools and everything else. So pay attention. We're still number 2 with senior citizens. Somebody need to care.
Reverend Regina Reagan.
Yeah, we're here right now today with Mary and Mary. But as we're here with Mary and Mary,
Introduce yourself.
there are a whole lot of other Marys all over Pittsburgh that are facing the same situation, and this happens every month. Every month, people have to figure out, where am I going to live? Where can I go? And the biggest brunt of that is on black women.
Yes.
Black women are the ones that are most affected by this terrible housing situation. But the thing to remember, this is no accident. There's a policy in the city of Pittsburgh to get rid of black people and force black people out of the city to the suburbs. We lose 3 black people every day from the city to the suburbs. It used to be the majority of black people lived in Pittsburgh, in this region. Now the majority are scattered in Penn Hills, Homestead, Clairton, Aliquippa, you know all the cities. The majority of black people are no longer in the city of Pittsburgh and Allegheny County, but we're outside. We've lost a quarter of the black population from the city to the suburbs since 1980. 1980, there were 100,000 black people. By 2010, we were down to 75,000 black people. And the rate of push out keeps increasing and increasing. And the main reason? Because the rent is too damn high. And without a pushback from us, I mean, we got to do everything we can to help you and every individual in their situation. But the problem is much bigger. It's a problem with the system. It's not just Pittsburgh either. So we have to be part of a movement to really change housing policy, to really make housing a human right.
Consensus crew. Speaking of black women, one of the most powerful ones that I know, Renelle Nye.
Not no more.
Fighting housing issues.
Some
things don't change.
Pour me out nowadays.
Some things don't change.
We're still following your footsteps.
That's it.
Absolutely. That's right. Hi, everybody. I'm just happy that I found out about Mary and Mary, and that there's going to be some resolution.
Come on.
We're going to take care of them. We have to come together and force those in power to do what needs to be done. Evictions are devastating.
For sure.
I mean, to feel unwanted and pushed out and kicked out is something that a lot of people never come back from. At the Penn Plaza, when they shut Penn Plaza down, when people got the work, people actually had heart attacks. People actually died because of push out. Evictions mostly happen by design. The average eviction is between $2,000 and $2,000 if it's for rent. A lot of times people get evicted for no cause, and we need to implement just cause legislation in our city's charter.
Yes.
We need to make sure that the only reason they can put you out maybe is for lack of paying rent. And the reality is, with $7.25 an hour, it's difficult to pay $800–900 a month. And I have seen whole families devastated with their stuff sitting on the curb, crying, kids embarrassed, mothers embarrassed. And not only that, when you evict a family, it takes 2 years to rehouse them. in this current economy, and it costs our Health and Human Services $18,000 to rehouse a family. The rents between, the evictions between $500 and $2,000. What makes sense? Pay the rent and keep the family in their home.
Right.
We need a campaign around keeping people home. Ain't nothing like a foundation. When you don't have a place to live, how can you focus? How can you thrive? How can you take care of your children? You can't even look your kids in the face every day. Y'all's all piled up in grandma's house. It's not right. And I'm telling you, we have to change the way we treat people. Not only that, we have to think about other things, like our base, like our political base.
That's right.
We continue to allow them to move people out of our neighborhoods and out of our communities. Pretty soon, we're not going to have no representation. So I'm speaking now to Daniel, Jake, and Ed. Letting them know, y'all keep it up. Pretty soon, we're going to be the minority in these neighborhoods, and ain't nobody going to be out there voting for y'all. I'm done.
Renell's comment was, we vote in each and every election, that's what we need to do.
Absolutely.
Not just when it's a national election,
That's right.
not just when we're excited about whoever's running.
Go to Greensburg.
I do, I want to make a call to action.
And I came up with something, let's see what you come up with. Introduce
Okay.
yourself. More everybody to see who they are with.
My name is Carol, and I'm with the Hill District Consensus Group and several partnerships, the Landless People, thank you for coming, Penn Plaza, Pittsburgh United, everyone. But anyway, I want to make a call to action because, first of all, displacement is real, very real, but it's also traumatizing. And people don't look at the trauma, and Ronell spoke a little bit about it. But I never thought in my whole life that I would try to help a person navigate housing and application and walk them through. And we're being told, oh, it's a 4 to 5 year wait list. So when did you have to apply for housing? When you're in high school? This is ridiculous. I think we need to go to the high school and say, baby, you're in the 10th grade now. Get your application in because it's going to be a 4 to 5 year wait list. So, and another thing, I want to make a call to action because the Landless Tenant Association, we're all working hard, but we don't know, and we really need people to reach out to us because we don't know what's going on until you reach out to us. So I'm going to say a number real quick, and someone will assist you. That number is 412-519-4689. Again, 412-519-4689. And last but not least, the Hill District Consensus Group, we offer an education once a month for you to learn your rights and not just to hold your hand, but to learn about the systematic things that are keeping you bound. So we host that once a month, and you can reach us through our website or at 412-477-5196. We have our next workshop June 27th at the Hill House Association, and we're going to talk about the systematic racism that keeps people bounded to the historical policies since the 60s. Because really, we really need to go back to the 1900s, but we don't want to overwhelm people. But that's what we're going to start with the 60s with people so they can catch up. But yes, again, the Landless Tenant Association, their number is 412-519-4689, and Hill District Consensus Group 412-477-5196. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We also want to thank Carol Hardiman, assisting Mary Evans and giving her some love, so we appreciate that. We're going to have just one quick one to say. Celeste, Scott, you want to say something about Pittsburgh? Pittsburgh United has been just powerful and all kinds of good stuff. And then we're going to have her say a brief comment or two, and then we're going to wrap up. And again, we thank everybody who came out to share their wisdom and their advocacy and passion. You can see there's a lot of passion
Yeah.
with this.
Okay. Hi, my name is Celeste Scott. I'm the housing justice organizer for Pittsburgh United. And just reading that letter, I come to this being a person that was homeless, a person that was evicted, a person who was pushed out the homestead, a black queer single mom. I just don't see how anybody could just even read this and think about an affordable housing crisis of 20,000, and to see Miss Mary and Miss Mary and think of 20,000 people that are suffering that. I just don't know how we could do that. We have the solutions. We've done enough studies in the city. We know what to do. I think it's time to do it. I think we have to have the will to do it. We have to say that housing is a human right. Affordability targets have to be below 80% AMI. Nobody can afford that. There's just so many things that we have, tools in our toolbox that we need to be using. And I think the time is now. I go to city council a lot. One time I went and talking about voting and talking about ancestors and elders, I said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that's ancestor Fannie Lou Hamer, who was sick and tired of being sick and tired. Enough is enough. We have people that are leaving the city, disparately, black and brown, disabled, queer people leaving the city in droves, and enough is enough. I'm working on the Housing Opportunity Fund, and there will be a rental assistance program available. I get calls every day. Every day. I do a lot of direct services. I raise money for people to do rental assistance in my personal life as well. Just enough is enough. And it's time for us to act. When we see our people being evicted, we need to show up like we're showing up today. If somebody calls you, everybody show up. Everybody fight. And that's the way that we can bring and transform these systems. We have to do national, state, local policy changes.
Absolutely.
And we have to be there. We have to learn this stuff. We can do development without displacement.
Yes.
That's possible. We have to learn these things, and we have to fight for what's right. And so you'll continue to see us when you're evicting our people, and we wanted to stop and cease this, stop the harm, have people be able to return to the city, and enough is enough. Thank you.
Thanks, Celeste.
Once in a while, I do something that I think is smart, and that was to call on you to end this thing. So, very powerful.
Thank you.
We've had a passionate, powerful press conference, and hopefully some folks who see, hear, and read about what we've said, that those in power positions will be moved to act. I'm going to ask those in the room, everybody's doing what they're doing, if we can reassemble at another date, so we know who's doing what, when, and why, how we can support each other, what's missing. And I came up with this. I come up with slogans. The Mary Mary Pittsburgh Housing Bill of Rights. That's what we need to put together. The Mary Mary Pittsburgh Housing Bill of Rights. In honor of these people, these two ladies who brought us together today.
Married to the second power.
So thank you all for being with us. And do you have any questions? I think we've answered everything and then some. But thanks so much for being with us, and I appreciate everyone for coming out. Make sure I had your addresses and phone numbers and emails. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Absolutely. Thank you. Somebody needs to
So-
get Tim to say that.
Rico?
A few years ago,
Hold on just a second. Rico always has a good question.
so a few years
Maybe
ago,
not this time. No, I'm just kidding.
so a few years ago, we all came together in the Hill District and several other locations about land banking. And the city is supposed to have some type of legislation, and there's supposed to be some community organization that overseeing all these developers coming in and buying land and buying properties and stuff. That was all supposed to be set up to prevent this. And that was like 8 years ago. So
Okay.
where are we at right now with that?
I don't know if I don't have an answer on anybody else, but we can put it on the agenda of our coming together meeting.
I have a
You
little
have
bit.
a quick answer?
Far as
But
the
that'll be on the
city,
agenda.
that's, far as what you're talking about, the 2 year, that's kind of on the back burner. But as I know, the Hill CDC, they're working on the community land bank. And so, I don't know where they're at in the process, but I know the consensus group, they had people from all different, areas and residents, meet. And so we just have to give them a call, the Hill
So-
CDC.
So there is some work on.
So is there no oversight at all?
Yeah, they meet.
No, there's no oversight.
Well, what we'll do, so we don't criticize anybody, we will, Rico, we will put that on the agenda of the meeting. We all agree to have that meeting, I hope, and we'll come together and we'll review whatever anybody
But
has
I don't want
to share.
recreate the wheel. So
We
that's
don't-
already
what I'm
has a
saying.
housing
That's
table.
what I'm saying.
So that's, when is the next date of your housing table meeting? If people want to get involved, there's already a great group of people
Okay,
there.
Yeah.
let's make it work.
So we meet every 2 weeks on Wednesday. Oh, sorry.
Go on. Is that your foot? Oh, that's.
We meet every 2 weeks on Wednesday. So our last meeting was yesterday, the 29th.
Okay.
So we'll meet every 2 weeks the next Wednesday. And we have all sorts of stakeholders at the table. We've opened it up to the individuals and not just organizations. And people can reach out to Pittsburgh United, and you can find me as well. I mean, you want me to say my number?
Absolutely.
Okay, so my number, and I always answer the phone. I'm always up thinking about this stuff. My number is 412-583-6994. You can call me or text me, and I'll make sure you know the location and what's happening with the meetings. But we do have a housing justice campaign table that we're building out to work on these policies. And as far as the land bank, they do meet monthly. They were trying to do some action around getting people to come to these meetings. We know when we push as people, things move faster. So you can also go on the city website and look at those land bank meetings if you want to come and weigh in when they meet.
Thanks for
And
that.
that's the citywide, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's do this. Let's agree. We'll give you a copy of the appendix sheet. You send a notice out, and we'll encourage people to go to your meeting and support it. How's that? And then have the
Absolutely.
agenda items that anybody wants. Is that all right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Make it work. Like you said, we don't need to create wheels.
No,
and work
we need to support our
and then support what
advocates.
exists, and everybody find out what people are doing. So thank you all again for being with us. We hope that
Thank you for
today will
having
lead to some action.